show as well, talking about education right at the beginning. Basically, Trump is saying that he's going to restore education back to the parents. I think that's the only way to have education be run. The parents who are in those schools need to run it. And so I'll show you that. Remembrance Day is gone, I think. Schools are playing Islamic songs on Remembrance Day and teaching religions, which is weird. And the biggest story you haven't heard of, it was a competition between that and Remembrance Day for starting the show. We're going to go with Remembrance Day, but the biggest story you haven't heard of is, remember the big port strike, and they were legislated back or threatened to be legislated back because it was national security and like there were problems and all sorts of stuff, and you have to go back right now. Apparently we have a port in Montreal that's closed and a port in Vancouver that's closed. That's never happened before, and everybody's just hunky-dory about it. I think at least one of them is a lockout, and everybody's just happy, just fine about it. Nobody's worried about it, but the holiday season's coming up, and you might want to get your holiday ham sooner than later is all I'm saying. But at the same time, take everything with a grain of salt. So there's all of these, speculations and fears ramped up, and then all of a sudden things get sorted out and you barely feel it, right? So, I mean, there's lots happening, lots going on. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with Remembrance Day. And Ryan is responding to Jyoti Gondik's speech in Calgary yesterday. She is being criticized, says Mocha, for her, after reports emerged that she began her Remembrance Day speech by addressing everyone as settlers on someone else's land. I searched the internet and found the video. Here is the full speech. And so he front loads it with the offending parts. So there's two parts where she's talking about things that are kind of eyebrow raising, and they're right at the beginning, and then it actually starts the speech. And everybody is upset in the comments because people who were born here in Canada didn't settle here, is the feeling. And so having this people saying my family was established in Canada in 1657, hundreds of years before Canada was established as a country. Don't talk to me about settling Canada. Like, what are you talking about? And my family has been here forever, right? They say, or effectively forever. And so this reimagining history to fit the post-national woke version of history, in that we're all settlers and colonialists and the rest, is not true. But they've got people like Gondik who are pushing this falsehood, and people are pushing back. Here's the speech.
7 people.
Oh, that's way too quiet. I wonder why it's so quiet. Hold on, I'm going to turn it up, and then I'll get it out of the way as well. But essentially, she says, before, we came and settled here. And that's, I think, weird. So here we go.
These lands for generations before many of us came to settle here. With Major Kartar Singh Brad, who was my grandfather. He not only showed me love and kindness, I have been told the stories of his compassion and support to many displaced people who were forced to relocate during the partition of India many years ago. Good morning to all of you who have taken the time today to gather at the military museums to honor those who fought for our freedoms. And let me welcome you with Oki, Dadanastada, Ambawastich, and Tansei. These are greetings in the traditional languages of the Treaty 7 people who stewarded these lands for generations before many of us came to settle here. Indigenous ways of knowing and being have always prioritized living in harmony and in peace, a fundamental
How does she know? Who told her that?
Principle that we continue to see compromised throughout the world. On this day, when we remember the
So this is the Remembrance Day speech. Have you heard a whole bunch of Marxist post-national trimmings? What was she saying at the beginning? Nonsense? Like, made up words? What is happening here? Honestly, this is, if you took somebody from 1951 and from that Remembrance Day ceremony and brought them to the Calgary one from 2024, do you think they'd understand what was going on, or do you think that they would reject it completely? So, like, take me back. I would say, I'll go with you and I'll stay. And maybe we'll stop the communists from taking over in 75 years. Nicole says, I was born in Calgary over 50 years ago, and my family's presence in Alberta predates Canada, but I'm supposedly a settler? Gondik is an idiot. And Reclarence says, my family has been in Montreal since 1649, more than 200 years before Canada formed. I feel the same way. So having people cast shade at Canadians who were in Canada before the country was Canada is a little rich, right? And they're doing it everywhere. It's not just in Calgary, but Toronto too. Joe Warmington says before City of Toronto got to pay respects to the fallen troops on Remembrance Day, the Toronto City Protocol Manager, Aretha Phillip, took the veterans and families through a history lesson of Canada's colonization of country, racism, and slavery. Yay, we're not going to listen to that because I don't feel like being browbeaten this morning. The Gondek's words were just enough for me. National Post says Ontario school played Palestinian protest song in Arabic as its Remembrance Day music. Yeah, so that's not good, right? People are calling for the principal to be fired, and that's like a lot of people, not just on Twitter or X, but in real life too. I hear the MP has actually called the school board to see if, to put their weight around, right? To throw their weight around. But that's unbelievable. Joe Warmington has the song. I'm not going to play it, but you can check it out if you're interested. Links in the description. It's an Islamic song, what you would imagine an Islamic song would be. And Joe Warmington says this is the song that was played at Sir Robert Borden High School in Ottawa today. So the song's name is Haza Salam. And then there's more, but I get it all wrong. So not great, right? Not great. How does that happen? Why are they replacing the last post and talking about the Canada's contribution to peacekeeping and wars throughout the years and so on, and instead talking about a foreign war that Canada is, funding both sides of, I guess, right? The reason is this: Canada Proud highlights, where's the respect for our veterans? And it says Palestinian protesters try to hijack Remembrance Day ceremony in Kingston, Ontario. And the banner reads, to remember is to end all wars, free Palestine. So they're saying this is also our Remembrance Day. And in order to have a Remembrance Day, we have to end this war in Palestine. But the thing is, it's not Canada's war. And in order to tell a country to do something, you have to be able to back up what you're saying. You have to say, I want you to do this. And if they say no, then you say, okay, if you don't do this, I'm going to sanction you. I'm going to send a military to enforce what I'm saying. I'm going to regime change you. And the regime change thing, you make a call to the CIA, right? Like you don't actually do that directly. That's a little bit back channel-y, right? But fundamentally, it's a war. You need to have a war in order to get another country to do what you want them to do. So telling Israel, as Canada, stop what you're doing, we don't have the leverage. As Canada, again, telling Palestine, stop what you're doing, what influence do we have? Or what? We'll stop sending funds? We should probably stop sending funds anyway, right? We should stop funding these wars. So, and what do you think? Is this hijacking Remembrance Day, or is this a valuable contribution to Canadians and Canada's, another ledger on Canada's wars that we're a part of? Is this good or bad? I think it's bad. Let me know what you think in the comments. Jagmeet Singh. He says, today I'm at the Bonsor Park Cenotaph in my riding in Burnaby South as we gather to honor the heroes who have served our country with courage, pride, and determination. Their sacrifices remind us not only of the price of our freedom, but also of the preciousness of peace. On this day, we must also think of the challenges faced by our veterans and their families. They deserve our respect, but also our unwavering support. Let us commit to fighting for them just as they fought for us. We must advocate for veterans' rights to live and retire with dignity, a good home and health care and mental health care where and when they need it. Today, we pay tribute to the courage of our heroes, past and present, and renew our promise to serve them so they can continue to serve this great nation, lest we forget. So, the words sound nice and all that, but I don't believe Jagmeet Singh wants what's best for Canada. I don't believe it sounds like a reason to shoehorn in a socialist policy offering good homes and good mental health care and good physical health care and all the rest of it. Like currently, our doctors, etc., have wait lists instead of delivering healthcare. It's hours to get emergency medicine. It's months to get a primary care physician. If you have a specialist need, it's months before you get referral. I still haven't got a call for my hernia surgery, which I had last year, right? So it's pretty crazy if you ask me. It's pretty wild. And so like, I don't believe Jagmeet Singh is trying to highlight the soldiers, although somebody else must have written it for him, because it sounds like a pretty half decent Remembrance Day thing. He's not calling anybody settlers, so that's something. Here's Tom Mazzaro, and he says, Remembrance Day once held a sacred place in my heart, a time to honor the men and women who sacrificed everything for the freedoms we cherish. Yet today I feel nothing but anguish and anger at the state of this country. We are led by a prime minister who shows utter contempt for Canadians. Justin Trudeau has lied, stolen from the public purse, and forced an experimental injection onto millions with no accountability. Even more disgraceful is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, whose silence and inaction in the face of these abuses are nothing short of a betrayal. In February 2022, Justin Trudeau crossed an unforgivable line. Veterans, our nation's heroes, stood unarmed in the National War Memorial, defending the very charter rights they fought for and bled for. In response, Trudeau sent the police to brutalize them on the very ground where they came to honor their fallen brothers and sisters. These veterans, who gave their lives to ensure our freedom, were met with violence by those who are supposed to protect us. Now this Prime Minister, in the height of hypocrisy, dares to speak about unpayable debt to our veterans. There is no greater insult than seeing those who are meant to uphold freedom, safety, and respect turn on those who made it possible. It's a tragedy beyond words that the very people who fought to make Canada free have to watch their sacrifices be desecrated by leaders and institutions willing to abuse that freedom for their own gain. This Remembrance Day, let us remember the real cost of freedom and the unspeakable betrayal of those who disrespect it. So, yeah, like, I think what's missing from Jagmeet Singh's statement is any, acknowledgement that what happened in the Emergencies Act, what happened with all of that was abhorrent, right? The targeting of the Freedom Convoy, everything that happened with Zexi Lee, everything that's happened, really. Like, if you take that and ignore everything that the government has done to us, then this would be a fine statement that, whatever. But when you add context, he's ignoring and whitewashing what's happened and pretending that there is freedoms still standing that these people are protecting. You know what I'm saying? The government have already knocked them all down. They've betrayed us. And now they're saying, oh yeah, but lest we forget, right? It seems hollow and empty. And I didn't even realize it really until I read all of Tom's piece right after reading Jagmeet's. Jagmeet's sounds fake. Sounds like, just don't think about anything that's happened, and let's harken back to the good old days of Canada, lest we forget, right? And like, that's not where we are. Where we are is the government of Canada has betrayed the citizens of Canada, and they're not willing to admit their mistake, and they're desperately holding on to power, and they're going through these cultural dances and cultural ceremonies in order to placate the voters and make sure that the voters show up and turn up for them. I don't think they will, but like, I don't think our elections are above board either. So there you go. Libs of TikTok says, Trump says he'll shut down the Department of Education. The wins just keep on coming. This was supposed to bookend the Islamic songs being played in public schools in Ontario and Ottawa. And I just thought it was interesting because I agree with a lot of what Trump wants to do. I'll play this in just a second, but MJ Truth says, huge, Trump plans to give parents the power to fire school principals and teachers, bringing prayer back to the classroom, train children for meaningful jobs, and ending the Department of Education. Well, wouldn't that be wonderful? Like, wouldn't that be wonderful? Here are the 10 key ideas to create great schools. 1, respect the rights of parents to control the education of their children. 2, empower parents and local school boards to hire and reward great principals, teachers, and fire the bad ones. 3, ensure our classrooms are focused on arithmetic, reading, writing, math, and not political indoctrination. 4, teach students to love their country and not to hate their country. 5, bring back prayer in schools. 6, achieve schools that are safe, secure, and drug-free with immediate expulsion of a student that harms a teacher or another student. So like, just to address number 5 a little bit, I remember being in grade 2 and my teacher was Miss Anderson, and I didn't know the Lord's Prayer, and she was very concerned because I didn't know the Lord's Prayer. And because it was on the announcements every morning and I just didn't know it. And because I didn't care. I was like, doing something else in my head, right? I don't know what I was doing, but I wasn't listening to the announcements. That's for sure. And so my mom, or the teacher called my mom, and my mom came in and was like, why don't you know the Lord's Prayer? And then the next year it was gone. Like the next year they got rid of it. But it was a big deal. And was that making the public school a religious school, or was that just kind of setting the pace? And if I'm okay with that, would I be okay with other prayers, like Islamic prayers in the school? Would it be equal, or just Christian prayers, or what? And like, there's a real big intolerance for prayer in schools. So I think that would be a really contentious issue in Canada. I think people would really get upset about it. And so I don't know how to address that, but I think it's probably a good idea. But at the same time, when you open that Pandora's box, how far does the door swing, right? Like, are you blasting Islamic prayers before, like 5 times a day, so the Muslim kids know when it's time to go pray? Like, I don't think so, and I'm not advocating for that. So again, sticky, but bring back prayer in schools is something that is on this list. And again, it bears more conversation, but I think there's something to it. Anyway, achieve schools that are safe, secure, and drug-free with immediate expulsion of a student that harms a teacher or another student. Yes. My kid came home from school yesterday and said a kid punched him. And I was like, what? But it was a kid he was like looking after. They were doing lunch monitoring. And so we contacted the teacher and made sure that it was dealt with properly. But again, one of those things where, and I mean, like, you don't necessarily, young kids, especially grade 1, can be impulsive, and junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten can be impulsive. And they're not going to hurt you. But at the same time, I don't know. Very interesting things happening. But there are kids who are disruptive to the point of entire classrooms being unable to function because this kid has gone off. And those kids should not be welcome in classrooms. They shouldn't. They should have alternative schools, alternative classrooms that teach them the basics of behavior with the goal of integrating them back into the classroom. That's where I used to work. Integrating them back into the classroom effectively once they learn how to control their behavior, right? Like, they have to learn the basics, right? And a lot of times it has to do with the family. But regardless, like, we shouldn't have students who are doing well punished because one kid in their class doesn't have basic behavior management, like self-control skills. Anyway, back to this. Number 7, give parents the right to choose another school choice. Number 8, ensure students have access to projects-based learning experiences in the classroom to train them for meaningful work outside the classroom. 9, strive to give all students access to internships and work experiences to set them on a path to their first job. I want them to be more successful than Trump. I want them to be the happiest person in the world. So here's what Trump says. It's only a minute, so here we go.
And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place, and you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states. Thank you very much.
There you go. So a plan that sends the power back to the parents is a good idea. And the states, right? The Washington, D.C. shouldn't have a finger in every educational pie across the country, and the same with Ottawa. It shouldn't be dictating how kids are educated in Canada, because it's not helping us. Pierre Paul issue is a big issue. And again, this could have probably started the show, really. So Food Professor says over the next 2 weeks, nearly $6 billion, billion with a B, in goods are set to arrive at the Port of Montreal to supply Canada's holiday shopping season. So there's no Christmas. What do you got in the back from last year's Christmas decorations? Anyway, this will not end well, says the Food Professor, and Food Professor is highlighting himself from yesterday. He says, "Dear Anita Anand and Stephen McKinnon, after the Remembrance Day ceremonies today, you may want to get on the phone to address the situation in Vancouver and Montreal. This could escalate quickly with significant implications for food security." And again, November 11th, the Food Professor says, "Both ports of Vancouver and Montreal are now shut down at the same time, likely for the first time in history. The Port of Vancouver has been idle for 8 days. Below is the daily amount of agri-food cargo typically handled at the Port of Vancouver." So that's not great. So there's a lot of grains and a lot of fertilizers that come through. right? And prepared foods are a little low, but if they can't get the grains through, like that's going to be a problem, right? And here's one more. Both ports of Vancouver, Montreal, Canada's two largest ports, are now idle. There is no record of both ports being simultaneously shut down. Despite some forward buying, this situation is likely to pose a major challenge for retailers as the busy holiday season approaches. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't like saying, go and do something or anything like that. You can do what you can do, right? Like you can do what your money, like whatever money you have, etc. Like if you have $100 to put into Bitcoin, that's better than nothing, or like silver or gold or whatever your preferred thing is. But if Bitcoin goes up, like Bitcoin's doubled. So it was at 40,000 and it's at 120,000. More than doubled. And like I had some Bitcoin. I had enough Bitcoin. But if I had like $100,000 of Bitcoin, then I would be better. If I had $500,000 of Bitcoin, that would be even better. You know what I'm saying? And so like, because if it doubles, then what have you got? $1 million, right? Like, and so that's good, but you can be only prepared as you can be, right? And so like maybe go get a ham. Like maybe hedge your bets and get a holiday ham sooner than you otherwise would, because this may turn into something that makes it so that the price of certain foodstuffs spikes, but maybe not. And so like, I don't like causing any kind of panics, but like this seems like a bad situation that has been set up. And I don't understand. The other thing I don't get is how it can be a national security issue 3 weeks ago or before the United States election, and now the one port's been idle for 8 days and nobody's done a damn thing about it. It stinks. I think they're trying to economically tank Trump, and they're going to do anything and everything they can to do it. And what stinks? It stinks. CBC Watcher. Let's talk about more money. A CBC Watcher says, he's responding to the food professor, and the food professor says Trump isn't the biggest threat to Canada's agri-food sector. Ottawa is. Yeah, and a quote from that article is, since 2019, Canada's wholesale food prices have risen almost 40% faster than those in the United States, putting Canadian producers at a distinct disadvantage. If Ottawa doesn't take immediate steps to address competitiveness, Canadian grocers may increasingly turn to cheaper U.S. imports to keep prices in check. Yeah, and that will be harmful to the Canadian economy, but trying to keep the groceries prices stable, right, and like where they are, is the job of grocers, and they're going to try and do their best, right? But again, limited availability. Food professor again says he's excited to share the latest peer-reviewed implications of carbon pricing on food affordability and the agri-food sector in Canada, a scoping review. Co-authored by 11 scholars, this study dives into the complex relationship between carbon taxes and food affordability, especially in Canada and Western economies. Key insights: carbon taxes impact broader economic dynamics across sectors. Research gap in Canada: limited studies on carbon taxes' effects on food prices. Economic impact: carbon taxes reduce disposable income and increase food prices, affecting affordability. So carbon taxes hurt people, they don't help people, and that's not surprising, I don't think, but people aren't. Well, I've long said that government that likes the citizens at all wouldn't tax the inputs like energy and food, and our government hates us, and so they tax our inputs. They tax the tax on our inputs. Holly Doan says investigators confirm whistleblowers' complaints of national defense misuse of public funds. Canadian Forces base commander hired favored supplier without authority, oversight, or legal advice. Forget it, I'm doing it live. So what are we going to do about it? Nothing, I guess. Maxime Bernier is being attacked. Well, maybe not being attacked. Here's February 23, 2017. Globe Politics says, in promising to take axe to federal spending, Maxime Bernier has fun with figures. And Bernier says, why should it be impossible to cut federal spending by between $20 and $40 billion when the Liberal government went from $0 to $30 billion deficit in a single year? So why can they spend $30 billion of money they don't have, and we can't cut that because those programs are probably useless, and they probably are useless. A very, very big drag on our taxpayer base, our taxpayer money. Here's gov.exe. He makes a great point here. He says, I wake up in the morning and I sip some coffee I paid tax on. From a cup, I paid tax on. I get in a car, I pay tax on. I drive to the gas station to pay tax for fuel to get to work, where they take 35% of my income in tax every 2 weeks. So I can afford a house I pay taxes on, buy food I pay taxes on, heat that I pay taxes on, and maybe watch TV that I pay taxes on. Only to save some money so my kids can go to school and get a job so they can pay taxes too. And they tell me this is freedom. Freedom. It's not really, it's serfdom. Yeah, well, it does seem like serfdom, right? It seems like slavery. It used to be that the slave master had to put you up and like feed you, like here's a house. Maybe it's not a nice house. Maybe it's not the nice house that you'd choose, right? But they had to put you up in a house and they had to feed you. And when it got too costly to do that, and it was cheaper to just give you a wage and say, you figure it out on your own, see you later, that was the crossover. And it was still a form of slavery. And now we're just slaves to the government. Okay, at the beginning of the show, I said there is a butter black market. I don't know how to access the butter black market. I don't know that end consumers are actually the target of the butter black market, but maybe I could be wrong. I thought that it was bakeries. I thought it would be somebody coming in and saying like, I have a case of butter and it's $3 a pound rather than $6 a pound, half your cost. What do you think? And like, you think, yeah, please, right? And so, and I mean, obviously, no, you call the police, but some people might say yeah, right? And Table Salt says there's a black market for stolen butter in Brampton. Normally, I wouldn't care, but the dairy farmers dump billions of liters of milk, so I don't care because the market is cornered by the government. So they're, yeah, Amul butter, right? So, or $5 for $4 for unsalted, $5 for salted, $18 for, I don't know how many that is, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That seems like a pretty good deal. And 24 for Indian Amul butter, so black market butter. At your, I don't know which kind of grocery stores where you could find that, but I'm sure there are lots of them in Brampton. Bitcoin has been going on a tear, and it's about to flip silver. And so the price of Bitcoin in Canada is like $122,000, and in the United States it's $87,000. Previous high was $72,000. But holy smokes, right? Like I said, if I had $500,000 in Bitcoin before this whole thing went bananas, then I'd have more, right? And like, I wish I got more Bitcoin earlier. And I mean, I have a system that buys Bitcoin pretty regularly, just kind of like a little bit here and there, right? Averages out. My buddy's an accountant, so I told him that I don't know anything about money. He said, okay, do this. And I was like, okay, I could do that. So I did that. And so it's fine, but I wish I had like doubled it or tripled it or made it like all of my money. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful